My wife secretly siphoned $250, $0 from our joint account and handed everything over to her secret lover. Then she had the nerve to sue me for half the property, even though I had no idea about the affair or the stolen money. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing a story like this, but I guess life has a way of throwing punches when you least expect it. The craziest part. It all started with what seemed like a normal day, until I stumbled on something that flipped my entire world upside down. You know how people say they just had a gut feeling about something? Well, mine was screaming at me, but I ignored it for too long. The truth is, my name's Mike, and I've been married to Lisa for about 8 years now. We had what most people would call a steady relationship. Nothing spectacular, but enough stability to make me confident she was faithful, at least, that's what I thought. Lisa is the kind of woman who's always had a sharp tongue, a quick wit, and a way of twisting words until they fit her narrative. She's a little bitchy, honestly. But I loved her, or at least I thought I did. At first, the signs weren't obvious. She started working late more often, but she'd always say it was just busy with work, or she'd claim she had to meet clients or go to some networking event. I didn't think much of it. She'd come home tired, sometimes with a new designer bag or jewelry I knew I didn't buy her. Little things that I told myself were just her way of treating herself. But then small cracks showed up. She'd get irritable over nothing, snap at me for asking about her day, and suddenly she was secretive about her phone. She'd hide it when I came near, and if I tried to look at her screen, she'd get defensive and change the subject. The first real sign of trouble was when I noticed her bank statements. I'd been checking our joint account for months, just routine, I thought, and I saw some odd transfers. Small amounts at first, but then larger sums started going out. I figured maybe she was paying bills or splurging on something. But one day, I found a withdrawal of $10, $0 that I definitely didn't recognize. I asked her about it and she brushed me off, saying it was some investment she was making in secret. That was suspicious, but I didn't push too hard. I thought maybe she was hiding something for a reason, but I didn't yet realize how deep the rabbit hole went. Then came the real shocker. I was cleaning up the living room and saw her laptop open on her desk. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I just happened to glance over, and that's when I saw the email thread. It was between her and some guy named Jason. They'd been talking about meeting up, sharing flirtatious messages, and even talking about taking their relationship to the next level. I froze, my stomach sank, my mind raced. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Lisa was cheating on me, and not just that, she was doing it for months, maybe longer. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she do this? After everything we built, after all the plans we made. And then I saw the worst part, screenshots of her transferring money to Jason. Over $250, $0, just gone from our joint account. I could see the date stamps. The amounts, everything. My mind was spinning. That kind of money isn't just a mistake, it's premeditated. She had handed over everything she could to this guy and I had no idea. All the while she was acting like a perfect wife, bitchy, demanding but perfect. The betrayal hit me hard. I felt humiliated, angry, and numb all at once. I wanted to scream, to cry, to punch something. Instead, I just sat there staring at the screen, trying to process what I'd just seen. How long had she been doing this? Who was this Jason? And what the hell was I supposed to do now? I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't even know where to start. The trust was shattered and I could feel the foundation of my marriage crumbling beneath me. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything. Her words, her sneaky behavior, those damn messages. I was furious at her, but also hurt. How could she lie to my face for so long? How could she take my money, cheat on me, then have the nerve to act like nothing was wrong? I felt betrayed, used, and completely lost. But I also knew I couldn't just let this slide. There had to be a reckoning. I had to figure out what to do next, and I knew deep down that her lies and betrayal had set a course I couldn't ignore. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Sleep was impossible, my mind racing through every detail from the night before. I kept thinking about that email, her secret transfers, and the way she'd lied to my face so effortlessly. The worst part, I knew she'd lie again if I confronted her. Lisa was a master manipulator. She'd spin stories, deny everything, and make me doubt my own sanity if she could. But I couldn't just sit around and pretend I hadn't seen what I saw. I decided I had to get some clarity. I couldn't keep going in the dark. I needed to find out exactly how much she'd taken, who she was dealing with, and what her motives were. So I started digging deeper into her phone and bank accounts. That's when I uncovered the full extent of her treachery. The transfers weren't just random. She'd been siphoning money over the past 6 months, slowly draining us of our savings and handing it over to Jason, who turned out to be some guy she met at a bar weeks before she started acting suspicious. She told me she was working late, but what she was really doing was sneaking around behind my back. I found out that she'd convinced her friends she was helping out a friend in need, but in reality, she was funneling money to Jason's account, paying for his rent, his car, even his vacations. I couldn't believe the audacity. She'd lied to everyone, including her own family, about where the money was going, and she'd kept up her act so well that I was the only one left in the dark. The more I uncovered, the more furious I became. I felt like I was living in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I knew I had to confront her, but I also wanted to be strategic. I couldn't just blow up the marriage without knowing exactly what I was dealing with. I set up a hidden recording on my phone, just in case she decided to lie again, and waited for her to come home that evening. When she finally walked in, she looked tense, like she knew she'd been caught but was trying to hide it. Her eyes flicked nervously around the room, and she immediately started with her usual bitchy attitude, trying to brush off my questions as if I was overreacting. I didn't give her the chance. I pulled out my phone and played the recordings I'd made, her admitting to her affair, talking about the money she'd stolen, and even saying she was planning to leave me once she got her hands on the rest of the joint assets. Her face turned pale, then red with anger. She tried to deny everything, but I had the proof. That's when she started spinning her lies, claiming she deserves happiness, that I was stingy and boring, and that she'd never loved me the way I loved her. She even had the nerve to say she was just trying to protect herself because I was controlling. I was beyond furious. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and sick to my stomach. How could she sit there and lie so blatantly? Her whole life was a lie, and she was trying to turn the tables on me. I couldn't believe I'd married someone capable of this level of deception. I told her she was a selfish bitch, that I knew everything and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I told her I was filing for divorce and that I was going to get a lawyer to handle the financial mess she'd created. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, trying to act like she was the victim. "You're overreacting," she snapped. "You're just jealous because I found someone better than you. And anyway, I'll take half of everything, even if I have to sue you for it." That was the moment I realized she was completely delusional, thinking she could get away with this, thinking she could keep the money and that I'd just roll over. But I wasn't going to let her, not after everything. That night, I stayed up, going through our bank statements, legal documents, and her phone logs. I contacted a lawyer first thing the next morning. I knew I had to act fast before she managed to drain even more from our accounts or hide any more of her tracks. I also started gathering evidence, screenshots, emails, anything that could prove her deception, and prepared myself for what was coming next. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt like I'd been punched repeatedly. The woman I loved, the woman I'd trusted with my life, had been lying to me for months. I couldn't stop thinking about all the moments I missed, the signs I ignored, and the trust I shattered. But at the same time, I knew I had to stand up for myself. I couldn't let her walk all over me, steal my money, and then have the nerve to sue me for property I didn't even know she was draining. As I sat there, staring at the chaos of papers and screenshots, I realized that this wasn't just about money or infidelity. It was about respect, something she had completely destroyed. And I was starting to see that sometimes the only way to truly get justice is to fight back hard, no matter how painful it is. I was ready to do that. No matter what came next, I knew I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. After I got the lawyer on the phone and started to lay out everything I'd uncovered, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had a plan, and dread because I knew the fight was just beginning. Lisa didn't take it well when I told her I was filing for divorce and taking legal action to recover the money. She flipped out, calling me all sorts of names: crazy, paranoid, jealous, controlling, and insisted she was the victim. She said I was just jealous of her happiness and that I was too insecure to handle her success. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I'd seen enough. I knew she'd been lying for months, siphoning off cash, playing her games, and now she was trying to spin it so I was the bad guy. I sat her down that night, confronting her face to face, and laid out everything I'd found. I told her I knew about the affair, the money transfers, her lies. I told her I was done being used and manipulated. That's when she started crying, fake tears streaming down her face, trying to guilt trip me. "You're just mad I found someone better," she sobbed. "You're so boring, Mike. I deserve to be happy, even if that means leaving you." That was the moment I realized her tears weren't genuine. She was just trying to save her own ass, spinning her story to make herself look like the victim. I knew better. I knew she'd been cheating, stealing, and scheming behind my back. I felt a strange calmness come over me, like I'd finally accepted the betrayal and was ready to fight for what's rightfully mine. The next step was to get the evidence in order. I had to prove that her financial dealings were fraudulent, that she'd been siphoning money without my knowledge. I made copies of every bank statement, every transfer, every email. I also hired a forensic accountant to trace the money trail and figure out exactly how much she'd stolen. Turns out, she'd managed to siphon off close to $250, $0, more than I even realized at first. That's $250,000 she'd handed over to her secret lover, Jason, all behind my back. Meanwhile, Lisa was still insisting she was innocent, claiming she only did it for us, saying she was going to leave Jason and come back to me once she sorted her life out. I couldn't believe the audacity of her lies. She kept spinning stories that made no sense, trying to manipulate everyone around her. She'd tell her friends I was abusive or controlling, just so they'd side with her, but I didn't care about her lies anymore. I knew the truth, and I was determined to see her pay for what she'd done. In the legal world, things moved fast. The moment I filed the papers, Lisa's lawyer tried to drag things out, claiming she was entitled to half the property because we were married. But I had the evidence, proof of her deception, proof of the stolen money, proof that she'd been lying about her whereabouts for months. My lawyer was confident we had a strong case. We also filed for an injunction to freeze her accounts, preventing her from moving or hiding any more money. While all this was happening, I felt of emotions. Sometimes I'd be furious, other times just numb. I'd look at her, sitting across from me, and wonder how I ever trusted her. How I let her manipulate me for so long. I was angry that she'd betrayed everything we built, that she'd taken my trust and turned it into a weapon. But I also felt a strange sense of relief, like I was finally taking back control. The hardest part was seeing her try to manipulate the situation. She'd call me heartless or vindictive, even accuse me of trying to ruin her life. She told her friends I was abusive and controlling, trying to paint herself as the victim. I just kept silent, knowing that the truth was on my side. I knew I had to stay calm, keep my evidence organized, and let the legal process do its work. In the meantime, I started to think about what life would look like after all this. The betrayal had cut so deep, but I realized I'd be better off without her. I deserved someone who wouldn't lie or steal from me. I deserved honesty and respect. I'd been before, but now I was waking up. The money was just money. What mattered was reclaiming my life and moving forward. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let her win. Not after everything she'd done. Not after she'd tried to destroy me. As the days went on, I kept gathering evidence, preparing for the inevitable courtroom battles. I was determined to get my money back, to hold her accountable, and to finally put this nightmare behind me. I'd been betrayed in every way possible, but I refused to let her take everything: my trust, my savings, my dignity. I realized that sometimes the only way to really get revenge is to fight back with everything you've got, and that's exactly what I was going to do. The court dates came faster than I expected, and honestly, I wasn't prepared for how intense everything would get. Lisa's lawyers spun their usual web of lies, claiming I was a controlling husband who was trying to ruin her, that she was just trying to find her happiness, and that all the money she took was for legitimate reasons. They painted her as the victim, a woman desperate for love and attention who had been pushed to her limits. It was infuriating to listen to their bullshit, but I knew better. I had the evidence and I was ready to fight. The first hearing was a nightmare. Lisa sat across from me, her face cold and calculating, her eyes trying to intimidate me. She didn't look remorseful, she looked like she was already planning her next move. Her lawyer tried to argue that I was an abusive, controlling husband and that I had no right to claim any of the money she transferred. But I had the proof, bank statements, screenshots, witness testimony, that showed she'd been sneaking around for months, stealing from us and lying her ass off. I felt a surge of satisfaction when my lawyer presented the evidence, and I saw her lawyer scramble to come up with a counterargument. Meanwhile, Lisa's story kept changing. First, she said she was helping a friend. Then she claimed she was investing in her future. And finally, she just said she deserved happiness. But none of her stories held water. Her own messages proved she'd been planning her escape for months, handing over money to Jason and convincing her friends she was doing what she had to do. It was clear she was trying to manipulate the system, but I wasn't about to let her. The judge listened carefully, reviewing all the evidence I provided. The forensic accountant's report was a game changer, showing exactly how much she'd siphoned off and how it all linked to her secret affair. I could see the wheels turning in the judge's mind, and I knew this was heading in our favor. We asked for the court to freeze her accounts, to prevent her from hiding or moving any more money, and to order her to return what she'd stolen. Lisa's reaction was classic. She threw a fit, yelling that I was destroying her life and that I was jealous and insecure. She started crying fake tears, trying to sway the judge, but it didn't work. The court sided with us. They issued an order to freeze her assets and scheduled a hearing for the property division. I left that court feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. I'd fought hard and I'd won some ground, but I knew this wasn't over yet. Back at home, Lisa's behavior only got worse. She started calling me all sorts of names, saying I was heartless, possessive, and paranoid. She even accused me of trying to ruin her reputation. It was clear she was desperate, trying to spin her lies and cling to whatever shred of control she had left. I didn't bother arguing anymore. I'd heard enough lies to last a lifetime. Instead, I focused on the next steps, getting the money back, unmasking her deception, and preparing for the final court showdown. In the meantime, I felt a strange sense of clarity. All the pain, betrayal, and anger had pushed me to a breaking point, but now I saw things more clearly. She'd been manipulative, dishonest, and selfish, and I was done being her victim. I realized that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can start climbing out. I'd lost trust in her, yes, but I'd gained a sense of strength I never knew I had. Throughout all this, I kept thinking about how stupid I'd been to ignore the signs, how I'd convinced myself she was just stressed or busy, instead of seeing the truth right in front of me. But that's the thing, sometimes the truth is ugly and you have to face it head on. I also learned that no matter how much someone lies or manipulates, the truth always finds a way to come out. And now, I was finally standing on solid ground, ready to reclaim what I'd lost. The hardest part was accepting that I might never get all that money back, those $250, $0 that she handed over to Jason, that she stole from us, that she thought she could hide forever. But I knew I had to focus on the bigger picture, my dignity, my sanity, and the future I wanted to rebuild. I couldn't change what she did, but I could control how I responded. And I was determined to come out of this stronger, wiser, and more cautious than ever before. I learned the hard way that betrayal cuts deep, but resilience can cut even deeper. The final court hearing was the most draining experience I've ever faced. By then, everything was laid out clearly, proof of her theft, her affair, her lies, and her manipulations. The courtroom was tense, and I could see Lisa's face flickering with anger and desperation. She kept trying to spin her narrative, claiming she was the victim, that I was trying to ruin her life. but the judge wasn't buying it. The evidence spoke volumes, and I felt a strange sense of vindication as the proceedings unfolded. My lawyer presented the forensic accountant's report, showing exactly how much she'd stolen and how it was linked to her affair with Jason. We also brought in witnesses some of her friends who confirmed she'd been acting secretively, lying about her whereabouts and pushing the blame onto me. It was brutal, but it was necessary. I kept my composure, knowing that if I lost my temper or let her manipulate me, I'd lose everything. Lisa was trying everything to turn the court against me. Her tears, her accusations, her claims that I was abusive or controlling. But it was clear she was just grasping at straws. The judge saw through her bullshit. After a long, intense session, the court ruled in our favor. They ordered Lisa to pay back the stolen money, an amount close to what she'd siphoned off, and to surrender all the property she was claiming. They also granted my request to freeze her remaining assets, ensuring she couldn't hide or move any more funds. I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe easier. The legal victory didn't erase the pain, but it proved that the truth could prevail. I watched her leave the courtroom, her face flushed with anger and defeat, and I realized I was finally free from her grip. The betrayal that had haunted me for so long was finally exposed for what it was. In the aftermath, I started to piece my life back together. It wasn't easy, trust was shattered, and I was left with a mountain of emotional scars. But I also learned something vital. I was stronger than I thought. I'd faced the worst, and I'd come out the other side. I decided to cut all ties with Lisa, to focus on healing and moving forward. I started therapy to process everything. I needed to rebuild my confidence and trust in myself again. I also made a vow to be more cautious and aware. The signs had been there, but I'd ignored them out of love and hope. Now I knew better. I'd never let someone manipulate me like that again. I learned that people are capable of incredible deception, but honesty and integrity matter most. I also realized that sometimes revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your own life and dignity. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the warning signs sooner. I wish I'd trusted my instincts more. But I also know that I can't change the past. All I can do is learn from it. I want anyone reading this to understand that betrayal cuts deep, but resilience and truth can heal wounds. No matter how bad things get, there's always a way out. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply standing up and fighting for yourself. Now I'm rebuilding my life, slowly, carefully, and with a new sense of awareness. I've got my independence back, my confidence restored, and a clearer idea of what I want moving forward. And if there's one thing I'd tell anyone in a similar situation, it's this. Don't ignore the signs, trust yourself, and never settle for lies. Because in the end, honesty is what saves us and truth is what sets us free. Looking back now, I realize that this whole ordeal changed me in ways I never expected. I used to believe in the idea of forever, in the fairy tale that love meant trust and loyalty. Turns out, betrayal can shatter that illusion in an instant. But what I've learned is that even after the worst heartbreak, you can find a way to rebuild, stronger, wiser, and more aware of what really matters. Losing the money, discovering her affair, and facing her manipulations was a brutal wake-up call. It forced me to confront the fact that I'd been too trusting, too naive. But it also made me realize that my worth isn't defined by her lies or her betrayal. It's about how I choose to move forward. I've come to understand that some people are just capable of deception, and the only thing you can do is protect yourself and your future. This experience has taught me the importance of boundaries, of trusting your instincts, and of never ignoring the small signs that something's off. I wish I'd listened to my gut sooner, but I also accept that everything happens for a reason. Now I'm more cautious, more self-aware, and more determined to find genuine happiness and trust again on my terms. I want anyone who's reading this and going through something similar to know this. You're not alone. Betrayal hurts, but it doesn't define you. You have the strength to pick yourself up, to fight for what's right, and to rebuild your life. It's okay to feel broken for a while, but never forget that healing is possible. Trust takes time, but when you do find it again, It will be more meaningful because you've learned what to look for and what to avoid. Most importantly, I've learned that revenge isn't about hurting her. That's too easy, too petty. True revenge is reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your peace of mind. It's about standing tall after everything falls apart and saying, I'm still here, I'm still standing, and I deserve better. That's what keeps me going. In the end, I'm grateful for the lessons this nightmare has taught me. I now know what real trust looks like, and I know that no amount of money or lies can take away my strength if I refuse to let them. My future is uncertain, but I'm confident that I'll build it better than before. Because no matter how deep the betrayal, there's always a way out, and I found mine.